Hello, friends. I welcome you all to this 18th session on Law of Evidence. In this session, we will be discussing Section 15 and 16 of Indian Evidence Act. These are small sections and are usually asked in preliminary examination. So, as a brief overview, here we will discuss Section 15 and Section 16. What Section 15 says: facts bearing on question whether the act was accidental or intentional. So, when we want to find out that whether a particular act which was done by a person, whether that act was intentional or whether that act was accidental, because criminal liability would very much depend upon if the act was intentional, and criminal liability will be highly reduced if the act was accidental in nature. So let's see what section 15 says. So section 15 provides that when there is a question that whether an act was accidental or intentional or done with a particular knowledge or particular intention. So where the question is that whether the act was an intentional act or accidental act or was done with a particular knowledge or with a particular intention, the fact that such act formed part of series of similar occurrences in each of which the person doing the act was concerned is relevant. So when we want to find out whether an act was accidental or intentional, then series of similar occurrences that earlier also the same thing has happened, and in the same thing in that particular occurrences, in all such occurrences the person concerned was involved, then that would cast an apprehension in the mind that as accident can occur once, accident can occur twice, but accident cannot occur in all at all times. So if at all the times a thing is taking place, we can infer that maybe that act was intentional and not accidental. We can understand it much better through the illustration which has been attached to it. Now, in the illustration, it is said that suppose there is a house and that house is has caught fire, and then A is claiming insurance for it. Now, the fact that earlier also A had a house and that house got fired and he got insurance money for it. Thereafter, again, A bought another house, he insured it, that house got fired and A got insurance money for it. And again, A bought another house, that house also got insured, he got insured. Then that house also got fired and then A got the money. Then all this will show that most probably it is the intentional act of A and not an accidental act. So A is accused of burning down his house in order to obtain money for which it was insured. The fact that A lived in several houses successively, each of which he insured, in each of which the fire occurred, and after each of which fires A received payment from the different insurance office, are relevant, as tending to show that the fires were not accidental. So, section 15 says that whether an act is accidental or intentional, then what can be shown or what would be relevant is that whether in similar occurrences that particular person was involved or not. Now, a very famous case law is there, Mackin versus Attorney General of New South Wales. In this case, what happened is that in late 19th century, there was a tradition that children which are born out of wedlock, now they were given to couples who were willing to care for them in exchange for a small fees. Now Mackins took a child and later on the child was found dead in the neighboring, buried in the drain of neighboring property. Now what Mackin argued is that actually the husband and wife argued that they don't know they had taken the child, but after sometimes they gave it back to the original parents, and thereafter they don't know what happened. Now, what happened is that it was soon discovered when the uh, neighboring property was inquired upon or dug upon. They found 12 babies buried in the neighboring property and connected to the Macons. Now, this particular fact that 12 babies were also found in the similar manner was not fact in issue, but it became relevant because in there is it shows that there are series of similar occurrences in which that particular person was also concerned. So finally, they were held guilty, and the husband was put hanged while the wife was given life imprisonment. So what section 15 says is that in a series of occurrence, if that particular person is connected, then it may be that the act was intentional and not accidental. So it makes those series of occurrences relevant in order to determine whether an act is accidental or intentional. Now let's see section 16. What section 16 says is that when the existence of a course of business is relevant. Now, course of business means the way a particular act is done, the way a particular thing is done. For example, if it is in course of business that school opens at 10 o'clock in the morning and closes at 6, then and all the students who come, their attendance is made, then it is relevant in order to show that whether a particular person was present in the school or not. So section 16 provides that when there is a question whether a particular act was done, the existence of any course of business according to which it naturally would have been done is a relevant fact. So whether a particular act was done or not, then the fact that there is a natural course of business in which that act is being done would be relevant. This also we will understand by the illustration which is attached to it. So where the question is that a particular letter was dispatched. The fact that it was ordinary course of business for all letters put in certain place to be carried to post, and that particular letter was put in that place are relevant. So where the question is that whether a particular letter was dispatched or not, and there is a natural course of business in which all these letters which are put in a particular place are posted and dispatched. So from that it can be this natural course of business becomes relevant, and it can be said that that letter was also dispatched because it is not natural course of business that letters put at a certain place are being dispatched. So this is what is section 16. So a quick recap on these two sections, section 15 and section 16. As I told you, these are important from preliminary point of view. What section 15 says is that whether the question is whether an act is accidental or intentional, then the fact which becomes relevant under section 15 are similar occurrences or series of similar occurrences in which that person doing the act was concerned. Similarly, section 16 says that when the question is that whether a particular act was done or not, the natural course of business in which that act would have naturally been done also becomes relevant. So that is what is section 16 and section 15. Thank you, friends.